Welcome to the start of the 1990 Isuzu Fish River Canoe Marathon. It's now claimed to be the second biggest canoe race in the country after the Doozy. There's something in the region of 770 paddlers here today, in singles and doubles, the singles paddlers earning league points and the doubles paddlers obviously going for the big performances. We can expect some very good performances here from the top paddlers in the country. Weather-wise, it's been fairly cool, windy and cloudy. The water is always extremely cold. There's some very good rapids along the way, some great excitement, but if the wind picks up, the paddlers are going to suffer in the cold weather. But let's have a look at the action now. And paddlers coming from all over the country for this very popular race. Interesting that this year there's a very large contingent of Natal paddlers and of course a lot of paddlers coming from the Cape. And from there, sharing commentary with me is John Lee.
I think the best thing about the Fish River Marathon is always experiencing the wonderful Karoo hospitality of the people from the Craddock area. It's a superbly organized race and it's growing in stature every year.
And the well-known smile there of Roelof van Riet, SA Canoeing Federation Vice President, and he's paddling with Andre Collins. Day one starts on the Grassridge Dam and it's 47.4 kilometers to Knutsford Bridge. Paddlers going off in 5 batches, with the A batch being called back to start after creeping too much.
A batch heading straight for the dam wall for the takeout of the portage. In previous years they've had to paddle around Grassridge Island. This year, however, they'll paddle straight across, take out and begin the long 800-meter portage down to the river.
Of course, at this stage of the race, everybody going flat out and that water very turbulent down there. And you can already see the people getting into a basic diamond formation. And those front paddlers getting the clear water, whereas the paddlers in the middle getting the advantage of the wave from the other boats.
Very important to get to the wall first. Gives one a distinct advantage. Getting down to the river, there's very little place to put in again.
The paddlers then obviously not paddling down those sluice gates, but 23 cumecs being allowed out of the dam, and that then being reduced to 17 cumecs, providing a perfect paddling level.
Here we have Herefeld and Neil Evans reaching the wall first.
Young Robbie Herefeld, still a junior of course, and having returned recently from Switzerland where he took part in the World Junior Championships. With him, Neil Evans, a man who's been out of action for a while, recovering from a shoulder operation. But he says he's back and ready to start paddling big time again.
And it looks as if he's got away into the lead there. It's a long 800-meter portage here. There are a lot of stones, thorns, anything can happen on the way down to the river, which you can see in the background in amongst the trees there. The altitude, of course, playing quite a role here. It's not that easy for the Cape paddlers. Transvaal paddlers are obviously far more acclimatized to this high altitude.
But that portage coming as quite a shock for these paddlers because most of them have done their winter training on water only and very few are specializing at this stage in any sort of running with their boats.
Edgar Boom and Charles Melk of the Cape taking it easy here, followed by another Cape paddler, Bernard de Wit, who's whistling his way back down to the river.
And then it's back onto the river and a short paddle. In the brochure, paddlers are advised not even to put on their splash covers. It's less than a kilometer before the takeout at the Collet Weir, a compulsory portage.
At this stage, the leaders have got a lot of room to move here. Very easy for the top chaps to get back into the water, but later on, there'll be a lot of trouble here, a lot of problems for people getting back into the water. There's very little space there.
So the first taste then of the river, and one's initial reaction is that the water is cold and very fast flowing, this making the Fish such an exciting river to paddle.
Paddlers acclimatizing themselves, getting their arms going again, having to put their splash covers on, some of them. Takes a while to get back into one's stride after a long run like that.
In second position after that put in, Gavin Tarr and Kenny Reynolds from Natal, a very experienced paddling pair, and they're lying behind the leaders at this stage, Robbie Herefeld in the front and Neil Evans. Neil Evans, of course, part of the defending pair. Last year he won this race with Graham Monteith. In third position, Sean Rice in the front and Colin Simpkins in the back.
Here we see the paddlers entering the Weeping Willows. Very narrow channels here. The water rushes through and many a paddler's come to grief here in the past.
And so to the infamous Keith's flyover. And here, of course, the big question is whether one should shoot it or whether one should take the safer action and walk around on the left bank. And even the top paddlers make this sort of decision. It's not worth it this early in the race to break. And of course, the crowd comes here in their hundreds, hoping to see some action.
Interesting tactics here as we see Herefeld and Neil Evans choose to portage around this rapid. They could lose some time here, and here we see Sean Rice and Colin Simpkins very carefully negotiating this rapid. They're approaching the huge hole at the bottom, a perfect line, and they're through.
That line, crucially important. If you take it half a meter the wrong way, you can end up breaking the boat. And it seems to break in the back, all that water pressure coming down on the back of the boat. And as you can see there, Herefeld and Evans losing some time now to Rice and Simpkins, who've gone into the lead.
They played safe, but an excellent decision. Kenny Reynolds and Gavin Tarr successfully negotiating the rapid, but picking up a few problems as they get shunted into the eddy. Cape Crew, Conradi and Baker slightly to their right and coming to grief horribly here in Keith's flyover. Not a pleasant swim. This will cost them a lot of time in the race overall. Their teammates Gerard Beukes and Chris de Waal choosing to portage wisely.
And of course, the worst thing about this sort of thing is that your pride takes such a terrible blow, and then you're hit by that cold, cold water, and it takes quite a while to get things together as you float downstream out of control. That boat there, certainly out of the race.
That's Eugene van der Westhuizen and Craig Bosenberg of Western Province. Their pride and their boat taking a horrible knock there.
Problems here for Reggie Willis from the Transvaal. Once you're out of that boat, you're really helpless. And of course, life jackets compulsory in this race, and one can see why.
Sam Wire of Transvaal, very experienced paddler here with Pete Connor, who's been paddling for many years. Setting themselves up perfectly. Precisely the right line down the left, missing the big hole at the bottom.
Chris Jennings and his partner from the Bulemanzi Club in Johannesburg taking that risk, and it looks like they make it through successfully.
Back to the leaders now, where Herefeld and Evans and Rice and Simpkins have broken away from the rest of the field, and they're powering their way into the lead here. Interesting to see that all the paddlers here are using the new wing paddles.
And we come up to Salpan's Drift, which is certainly the most exciting part of the race. Going underneath the bridge here, there's an arrow painted on the wall to help the paddlers. And it is a terrifying feeling as one goes down into that big water. And you have to choose your angle correctly. Follow that arrow and through you go.
Just below the bridge, there's a big rock in the river where many boats come to grief. But Chalipski's making it successfully there.
And once through Salpan's rapid, a long rapid of about 500 meters, some more flat water. And interesting to look at the choice of boats here among the top paddlers. Simpkins and Rice paddling a Noka, and Evans and Herefeld paddling a Zephyr. The Zephyr, possibly a little bit faster, but it doesn't have as much volume in big water. And it's in this big water that you need a boat with a lot of volume to be able to buoy you up again out of that rough water.
Here we have some of the kings of the Berg River of the past, Rudolf van Ritt and Andre Collins, followed by JT Besson and Stefan Hugo. All Springbucks. Between them, they've won about 12 Berg River marathons. Clearly in the lead now, Rice and Simpkins dominating Herefeld and Evans through the last big rapid about 3 minutes from the end.
The really exciting thing about this river is that you come around the corner having paddled on flat water, and there's some very exciting white water for you to go through. It really is a great river to paddle.
Rice and Simpkins will obviously want to keep the upper hand here to the end and hold off the challenge from their younger opponents. A burst from them sees them across the line in first place for the day, followed by Neil Evans and Robbie Herefeld.
Always a relief to reach that end at Knutsford Bridge, as Sean Rice relaxes with his newly born baby. And there we have the results of day one then. Rice and Simpkins in 2 hours, 45 minutes and 47 seconds. 3 seconds ahead of Herefelt and Evans, with Tar and Reynolds in third position. But obviously for the people at the back, there are many tales of woe, and what ingenuity in getting these boats to the finish. And so to the end of day one. We'll be showing day two after the rugby, and for the time being, it's back to the studio. Welcome to day two of the Isuzu Fish River Canoe Marathon, a distance of 36.8 kilometers from Knutsford Bridge down to Craddock. And with me again, John Lee.
It's a freezing cold day in the Karoo here, and most of the paddlers you'll see be wearing a lot of thermal gear to keep them warm. Willem van Rit there not looking so happy about things, and Doozy King Graham Pope Ellis looking happy about things.
The early morning breeze certainly not looking very good as far as the weather is concerned. Like day one, it started cold and fairly windy, and they're off for the start of day two.
Day two, the organisers have arranged that the paddlers start on elapsed time. In other words, as they came in yesterday, the leaders Sean Rice and Colin Simpkins with Neil Evans and Robbie Herefelt.
Again, the canoeists divided into batches A, B and C and D, and they will go off at 5-minute intervals to avoid the big traffic on the river.
Gerard Bierkes and Chris de Waal from the Western Province powering away.
Some fairly long stretches of flat water ahead for these paddlers, but also with some fairly exciting big water.
The flat stretches ending in the crucial Baroda Weir, where one of the local farmers moving some of the bushes out of the way for the paddlers. A very crucial point this, where there's a short portage or a long portage, and it will be interesting to see which portage the crews decide to take here. Transvaal, Shooter and Cook electing to take the long portage through the dry Karoo scrublands. One can clearly see here how cleverly they get away into mid-current before they'll put their spray decks back on. Overnight leaders Simpkins and Rice, who've now clearly fallen back behind Herefelt and Neil Evans. They elected to take the short portage and had trouble getting over some trees. Evans and Herefelt seized their opportunity and forged into the lead here.
This is what Evans had said at the end of the first day, that he was confident that he could make some sort of break on Rice and Simpkins somewhere on the second day.
It'll be very difficult on a fast-flowing river for Rice and Simpkins to close this gap. They're up against formidable opponents here. Rice and Simpkins, perfect positioning in the rapids.
One can see also that the willow trees have disappeared on this second day stretch. The river takes on a totally different character on the second day. It's a lot wider, it's a lot flatter, and of course there is the excitement around the weirs and the bridges.
After a 20-minute hard chase, the lead is still ahead. Simpkins and Rice have made no impression on this great lead by junior Robbie Herefelt and Neil Evans.
Simpkins and Rice taking a slightly different line there, past Baroda Bridge. The water not particularly big at this stage, and interesting about this river how you'll come around a corner and suddenly you're into some big stopper waves and some exciting paddling.
Natal's Gavin Tarr and Kenny Reynolds in third place, chasing the leaders. A tricky testing rapid below Baroda Bridge. One can easily break a boat there. Smile from Kenny Reynolds. Behind them, fourth placed, Shooter and Cook from the Transvaal, paddling very strongly. They're followed in fifth place by the Western Province crew, very experienced Springbok Gerard Bierkes and Chris de Waal. They've made up a lot of time today.
I think it's on these long stretches also that experience does count, because one has to pace oneself very well. It's very easy to go out too hard and then find yourself exhausted on these long flat stretches.
Here you can see some clever slip riding. The black boat in front doing most of the work, and here perfect diamond formation where the lead boat does the work, the other boats riding on the slipstream, saving the energy for later.
Interesting, that single there getting a good ride as well. And back with the chase for the lead, Rice and Simpkins trying their best to narrow that 2-minute gap on Herefeld and Evans, but making no impression. Herefeld and Evans paddling very powerfully, Herefeld setting the pace in front, and Evans, as said yesterday in day one, showing no sign of that shoulder operation which he'd had.
And here we get to the gauging weir, a critical point in the race where many boats have been broken in the past. Cautiously, the leaders approach. This is where they could lose the race. Perfect line, a good brace, and they're through.
Very exciting as the front paddler goes through that big water, and the relief at getting out still in one piece.
Tired looking Sean Rice, also approaching very cautiously. One of the best whitewater paddlers in the country, he shouldn't have a problem at all.
It helps to have spectators at a point like this. One certainly feels that you might be taking the right line. They show you where to go, and a bit of applause after you've made it through certainly doesn't do any harm. An odd line that boat took through there. That rock could have caused problems, but they're on their way now in third position, that being Reynolds and Tar.
Leaders Neil Evans and Robbie Herefeld at the crucial portage around Marlow Weir. Taking their time, making quite sure they don't trip and lose time here.
One can see in the background there just how big this gauging weir is, and good warning to the paddlers, a compulsory portage point as Rice and Simpkins come out, still trying to narrow that gap on Herefeld and Evans.
Herefeld and Evans with their tails up here, they're sure of a win now. If they get past Craddock Weir, they've got it in the bag. A race Herefeld's been trying to win for years now. Looking very confident, victory in sight.
And so it is that Herefeld and Evans win this 1990 Isuzu Fish River Marathon. For Evans, having won last year, a really sweet victory with Herefeld, as we've heard, who tried so hard to win this race. But back to Craddock Weir.
Great drama as Philip Thord-Gray and Dan van Niekerk caught in the stopper, leaning upstream, the wrong thing to do, and over they go, and out. It's a huge drop, and one has to change one's brace from left against the wall to right downstream.
Hats off to the Eastern Province Canoe Union here for giving diagrams and advice in the race brochure so that this sort of thing can be avoided. But these people didn't heed it. One must give good distance to the boat in front to make sure that they have in fact made it through safely.
I think the weir looks a lot more dramatic than it actually is, but a lot of distance needed between the boats here. Transvaal crew, perfect line, perfect brace, but unfortunately out. Lifesavers to the rescue here, doing a great job.
And then coming home in second position, Sean Rice and Colin Simpkins not being able to make up that gap on Herefeld and Evans. The gap, a massive 6 minutes in this race. The Fish River is certainly one of the most exciting races on the South African canoeing calendar. And there you have it then. Herefeld and Evans winning in 5:04.29, well clear of Rice and Simpkins with Tar and Reynolds in third position. Shooter and Cook coming up nicely, and Pepper and Montgomery coming up very well for fifth position. And so it is then from a warm, balmy Craddock in the Eastern Cape, we return you to the studio in Johannesburg.